So I think we can all agree that Fry at times can be a weird character. One of the strangest things about him though is that he has been considered the chosen one to save the universe on 2 separate occasions. He was the only one who could stop the brains, and he was the only one who could stop the Dark One. Oddly enough, both of these have to do with Fry's freaky brain, but that is kind of another video. Now, although we see what happens and we get the full stories for the Dark One, what we never find out is how Nibbler and the Niblodians figured out to look for Fry in the first place. So, to keep my promise from last week's video, in this video I will not only connect Fry directly to the griffins, but also I'm going to explain how Nibbler knew to look for Fry in the first place and why Fry is the chosen one. But hey, real quick guys, I'm trying to reach 2,000 subscribers, and if you guys could help me out with that, it would be greatly appreciated. So to pick up with what I teased with last week, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, please go watch last week's video. Let's quickly go over one of the things Fry is most famous for, becoming his own grandpa. To give you a rundown, basically in Roswell That Ends Well, Fry puts Jivy Pop in the microwave during a supernova explosion, and this causes the Planet Express crew to be sent back in time, becoming the alien ship that crash lands in Roswell, New Mexico. As it just so happens, his grandfather, Enos, was stationed there, and in a vain and idiotic attempts to make sure he does not die, he would ultimately end up killing him by putting him in a house during a test of a nuclear bomb. After this, he would go to his grandmother's house, and when she starts to come on to him, he actually thinks that Enos wasn't his grandfather because he was still existing. So Fry does the nasty and the pasty and bangs his grandma, simultaneously knocking her up and causing a weird time dilation thing to happen where time for everyone but the crew speeds up to where his grandmother is an old woman, and I guess taking all the Fry's memories of his grandfather and swapping them out for himself. You know, for all the things Futurama explains, this is literally never addressed, so it's kind of frustrating. Now, the side effects of this are actually interesting, because by Fry becoming his own grandfather, he actually lacks the delta brainwave, and this causes 2 things to happen. One, it lowers his intelligence significantly. Not that he doesn't have the potential to become intelligent, just usually making him exceptionally stupider than the average person. Now, the second thing it does is it makes him the only person capable of stopping the brains. Literally sentient brains that have been fighting the Niblodians since the beginning of the universe, in an attempt to gain all knowledge in the universe. Since they target this brainwave to make intelligent beings stop sinking, so their thoughts don't actually hurt them. Now, let me walk you through an event that happened to Stewie in The Big Bang Theory, and let me know in the comments if you notice some similarities. So in the episode, Stewie and Brian get stuck outside of time, and Stewie has to blow up the return pad to get them home. This explosion actually turns out to be the catalyst for the Big Bang, thus Stewie creates the universe, also making everything that happens before that a fixed series of events that would lead to Stewie being born and getting stuck outside of time, since it always has to happen like that for the universe to be created. But Bertram, Stewie's arch nemesis and half-brother, finds out Stewie has a time machine and tries to use it to kill Stewie by eliminating his ancestor. But he has to go back far enough to where Stewie is killed, or at a minimum make him not a genius, but Bertram would be unaffected. This leads him all the way back to the Renaissance times to kill none other than his ancestor, Leonardo da Vinci. So Brian and Stewie go back in time to stop him, and throughout the events of the episode, both da Vinci and Bertram are killed. But since Stewie and the universe don't disappear, he figures out that he has to be the one to stay in the past and pass on his genes. So he does just that when Da Vinci's girlfriend comes along, becoming his own ancestor. Also, side note and fun fact, Da Vinci actually had no children and thus doesn't have any direct descendants in the real world. As a matter of fact, he might actually have been gay and was arrested for sodomy before the charges were dismissed. The more you know. Anyway. So all of that sounds pretty familiar, right? But how will this connect Fry to the Griffins and make him the chosen one to defeat the Brains? Well, it's actually the lack of the Delta Brainwave. See, once Stewie becomes his own ancestor, the lack of the Delta Brainwave would have become a genetic trait, thus an entire family line of people that were all, in a sense, idiots, or at least did idiotic things. To give an example, I can use Peter and his ancestors, since it would have been through Peter's family that the lack of the brainwave would have come from. So for those of you who don't know, Peter is actually not only dumb, but he is actually legally retarded, and almost all of his ancestors pretty much act the same way he does. They all have the same mannerisms and get into shenanigans pretty much exactly like Peter does. But some of the ones we see were from before the Renaissance, some of you might say. And to that I say, good point, but those would have just been stories, and he was told by his hard-ass father, who actually, like I touched on in last week's video, wasn't his biological father, and it is sort of unclear whether or not he knew this or not, but if he did, he still stepped up, so good on him. Or if he was told all of this by his biological dad, who was the drunk idiot. So who knows how exactly they could all have been. I mean, a lot of it's probably really overly exaggerated. But then we can look at the man in Fry's family. They seem to have similar problems. His grandfather seemed uneducated. All his dad had going for him was he was in the military. And though a war veteran and a good soldier, take it from my own experience, in the military sometimes it's the ones who don't do a lot of thinking that are able to cope and do well in the service, and those are the ones who will usually end up making a career. His brother was about as intelligent as he was, and even his traitor's ancestor, David Farnsworth, was realistically pretty dumb and easily manipulated to the wrong side of the cause. Now, I will admit, this is still kind of a stretch, but I do have more, so don't worry. Because this also explains how Nibbler and the Nickelodeons knew what to look for in Fry to beat the brains ahead of time. They were already following Da Vinci's family tree. See, the Nickelodeons predate the Big Bang by 17 years, and since they witnessed the birth of the universe, they would have noticed how strange this particular formation was, studying just how it happened while battling the brains. They would have found out about how Stewie created it, though they might not at the time have understood it was due to Stewie time traveling. That is, until the timeline caught up to the Victorian era, and they would have been drawn to Earth, since the lack of the Delta brainwave in the population might have kept the brains at bay from returning to Earth to destroy it, because canonically the brains actually are the cause of the dinosaurs going extinct in this universe. That is until the future, when most of the people with that trait had died off or diluted it enough through the generations to where the entire planet regained the Delta brainwave, something we have already seen is possible with Fry's nephew, Philip, who literally was so successful, he was the first man on Mars. So with the Nickelodeons taking an interest in Earth, they would have been looking into the family tree of the people who lacked this brainwave, going all the way back to Da Vinci and then following Da Vinci's family tree, keeping tabs on them while trying to figure out what caused this anomaly. So they were probably keeping tabs on Enos, being in the most current generation at the time who lacked the brainwave, and then seeing the events of Roswell in real time, with Fry becoming his own grandfather, basically giving him, his dad, and his brother more potent genetics and a greater resistance to the brains. Then, the Nickelodeons, possibly not knowing he was time traveling, or maybe they did, since they can literally project their minds into the past, wait and bide their time until Fry is born, and since he caused the second anomaly, he was their prime candidate to send to the future to stop the brains when they did come back, basically turning him into a weapon against the brains they could pull out at any time, and then when the time was right, they simply make the events that happened to send Fry to the future. But basically, just to kind of sum up this whole idea, the Nickelodeons witness Stewie create the universe and start studying its creation. Eventually, the brains come into existence, and the Nickelodeons start battling the brains and looking for a way to defeat them. Around the Renaissance times, they register the brains are staying away from Earth. This is the time when Stewie becomes his own ancestor, and the lack of the Delta brainwave becomes a genetic trait in some of the population. The Nickelodeons start to study this and keep tabs on all of Stewie's descendants lacking the brainwave. Stewie's descendants eventually immigrate to Ireland and then ultimately to the Americas, some of them settling in New York and Rhode Island. Enos goes into the military and gets stationed as Roswell. Fry goes back in time, kills Enos, and becomes his own grandfather. The Nickelodeons see this, realize that Fry is the best candidate to send to the future to defeat the brains, and then Fry is born, grows up, and Nibbler and Fry himself send Fry into the future. And the rest of it as pretty much history. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below about all of these theories. Are they possible and make sense, or have I just looked way too far into it? Do you think this would actually explain why the brains didn't come back for so long, since it sort of seems like they should have came back way sooner than they did? But while you guys are down there, please remember for me to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, turn on that notification bell so you never miss another video from me, and I will see you guys in the next video.